Morning, guys. How are you? Welcome back to the Spurs Talk Show. I hope you're all happy, healthy, doing the things that you love, with the people that you love doing them with. In case you were wondering, this is not... The reason why you can barely see me is not because of my camera or the fact that you have cataracts. It's because of the visibility this morning on this brutally cold day. Absolutely freezing. One of the coldest days I can remember doing Tottenham walks. And look, without trying to sound a little bit vomit-inducing, I am going to take the opportunity to use a cliche or a metaphor here. The visibility in every direction is weak, it's poor. You can't see 20 metres in front of you, so the path ahead is unclear. The road that I travel on is icy and full of potholes and treacherous. Even the path behind, when you look back with reflection of the journey that you've walked, it doesn't quite look and feel the same as it does or it did before. And I think that that's kind of how I feel in summary about Tottenham Hotspur right now. Everything is in flux, guys. Everything feels like it's a mess. There is zero clarity or clarification on any of the major problems that we as a fan base feel that the club faces. Not just the fans, obviously. Surely the management can be put into there, and surely the board could be included in that analysis. Although from what I've heard, some of them have apparently an opinion that they're doing nothing wrong, which is eye-opening in and of itself. Paratici, yesterday the news breaks, or the day before, the evening before, Friday night, that his future ability to perform his job, not just in Italy but potentially across the world, is in disarray, it's in doubt. We don't know. At the moment, there's options, there's outcomes that could be anywhere from non-eventful to entirely catastrophic. And yet the club hasn't even come out to make a single statement. What the hell is that about? It's so disrespectful to the fans to see how disjointed, upset, disrupted everyone is right now with their sentiment around the club that they love and support. And they can't even come out with a simple statement regarding the viability of our director-in-chief of all things football, Fabio Paratici. It's disgraceful. It's disgraceful. On top of that, you know, you have 9 days left in the transfer window. Now look, I'm going to try and twist this into a positive video from this point on, because I feel like I've been fairly Lionel pessimistic over the last couple of weeks, and I guess I shouldn't hold myself in shame for doing that. It's just it's difficult times. It's difficult to find things too positive to talk about. But look, I remember this time last year, it all felt very much the same. It all felt very disjointed and unpleasant amongst the fan base. Probably not quite as much as it is now, but there was seemingly no end in sight to the disappointments of failed transfers and the continuing improvement of other players going to other teams that we were competing with. And then on deadline day or the day before, suddenly things changed. And not only did they transform the window from, obviously a big nothing burger, a big fat disappointment, but with benefit of hindsight, it was one of the best January windows that we've ever had, and arguably one of the best January transfer windows the Premier League has ever seen, considering the impact that those two players had. So I remain optimistic that we'll get something done. With that being said, there's noise out still about Pedro Porro that Tottenham are thinking about going back for one last bid with Sporting, one last attempt. And before they do that, they want to keep an eye and figure out, contemplate exactly what how serious Chelsea's interest in Pedro Porro is, and if it's of a certain level, then maybe they'll go in with a higher number. If it's not, then they won't. it's all very frustrating, this kind of Mexican standoff approach that we all know and hate about our owners has yielded so little in terms of real gains over the years. If you're going to end up paying close to the 40, even if you were to save 4 or 5 million by haggling and hanging on for Pedro Porro, and yet his impact in the team over the last 3-4 weeks could have given us an extra 8-9 points or 7 points, 6 points, whatever, anything more than that in the Premier League, you'll probably end up making that money back anyway through Premier League placings at the end of the year, and especially if you qualify for Europe or if you don't, if that's the difference. So there's a real short-sightedness sometimes when it comes to this negotiation approaches and attempts and stylistic behaviour that our owners have, and it's something that I find very distasteful, and something that I entirely agree with those who, you know, who are very much further on the Levy out bandwagon than I am. But look, there is other news before we move on to the Levy out thing. There is other news regarding transfers. We are also apparently looking at monitoring Ivan Fresneda, the right wing back, the right back from Valladolid. 18-year-old, he's played 10 games this season. I hadn't heard of him, to be entirely honest, but Tottenham are maybe looking to pivot their attention in that direction, according to some sources. And look, to be honest, I've looked at him. I'll put the stats up in front now. I haven't got them in front of me, but the overall takeaway is that in the 10 games that he's played for Valladolid, he has got himself into the top 2% of all defenders, also all right wing backs or right backs, all full backs rather, across all the top 5 leagues. He's in the top 2% of people for tackles made per 90, the top 4 or 5% for clearances. He's in the top 5% for stopping people dribbling past him. Defensively, he is a very talented, exciting player for his age to be in that kind of highest bracket. And it's only over a 10-game period, obviously, and it's for a team in a different league that plays a different style. So it's all the sample size is far too small to even contemplate making a bid for him, in my opinion. Especially if that bid is to bring him in to play to resolve our first team issues now. That's never going to happen. So I'll give it like a 1 out of 10 likely rating in any regard. But for what it's worth, I went and checked him out on Y-Scout and looked at all the different clips that were available about him. His crossing, poor. His ability to look up when he's got the ball is poor. He's very much a head down person, runs into corners and then crosses the ball without looking. And he's 18 years old, right? So all the time in the world to develop and learn. But you know, unless Tottenham are looking to literally buy a player now for more of this, you know, youth development, buy now, loan out, sell later waffle, then, which I think if that was a transfer we were to make, I think that would go down like a pint of warm sick, if I'm entirely honest, given the environment we're in right now. But that's the only way I could see it happening. He's nowhere near ready. Good player, defensively very astute. Going forward though, looks as all at sea as Emerson Royale, if not worse. So that's the only real kind of link, guys, that I haven't mentioned to you before. Zaniolo, obviously, you know, I'm sure you know about Zaniolo, the on again, off again transfer rumour to Tottenham Hotspur. Roma want him out. They've offered him to us. They've offered him to PSG apparently this morning. Look, how I feel about him is probably the same as how you feel about him. It all depends on your risk appetite for an injury-prone, talented player. He has missed as many games as he has played in his career through injury. When he plays, he's very good, generally. But do you want to expose a fragile, physical specimen of a man to our medical team? I don't. But listen, if that's the best we can do, if that's all we can do this window, and we need something done, then so be it. It will help us get a little bit excited. And he's a really good player, right? And hopefully his injuries are behind him. He's very talented, but he's He's by no means the priority in any way, shape or form. It's obvious what we need: a right back, a right wing back, centre backs, and many of them. Alright guys, last two topics are, one, I want to spend a little bit of time talking about the Levy out protest yesterday. Obviously, I don't know how many people ended up going. From what I saw on Twitter, from what I've heard from people like Brian, maybe up to 50 to 70 people were there who stood out in the freezing cold. On Saturday morning, they sacrificed one of their 2 days off in the week to promote the message and to voice their discontent in a place that's going to be heard. And I'm proud of those guys. You know, I'm absolutely in support of the right to protest. I absolutely support the effort and give you guys a pat on the back virtually. Well done. Obviously, I've seen on Twitter the reactions from some people ridiculing them, which I think is so counterproductive and so such an unnecessary way to give a dig, because I don't think it necessarily had anything to be dug at. You know, freezing cold day. Of course, you're going to have the people who say they're going to turn up, but really, when it comes down to it, when the rubber meets the road, they don't really feel that strongly. Or when they look outside and they see a cold day, they're not suddenly as fussed. And there's always going to be those sorts of people, you know. And because it's so much easier to put a hashtag Levy out or Enoch out at the end of every tweet, but when you actually have to sacrifice something that takes a bit of effort, then there's going to be people that flake. But I don't think that people that did go should look at that in any way as a disappointment. I think they did a really good job. Fair play to them. I respect it. For those of you who know me, you know how I feel. I don't feel anywhere near as strongly about the ownership as they do, so it's not something that I'm prepared to do yet, but my opinions are always open to change. I'm open-minded. I like to think of it as having flexibility of thought, and as new information emerges, new details come around, as the timeline moves on, I think that if there's a continuation of this behaviour from our board, more and more people that would be considered moderate are going to end up leaning that way and being a participant in that journey with them. I'm not there yet. I still want the owners to leave if they're not going to be able to back the club and do the things that they are supposed to do in order to compete for the very highest honours. And I don't think they are prepared to do that, what's necessary. But like I've said before 1,000 times, I think that Enoch out is built on a general kind of resentment of the historical efforts that they've made, and I don't share that same feeling. But at the moment, I'm seeing and hearing all that I need to for my needle to move, you know, increasingly that way. But I remain optimistic that something will happen in this window, and we'll see where we go from there. Last thing I'll say, guys, is look, to try and finish on a positive note, we've got a big game against Fulham tomorrow night, a game that, for what it's worth, is usually quite successful for us. Historically speaking, I think we played Fulham 31 times, and I think we've won 18 times. I think Fulham have only won 6. We've actually won twice as many games as they have, even at Craven Cottage. 10 wins to us, 5 to them. And so, with all due respect to Fulham and acknowledging how good of a team they've become this season, I do think that Tottenham have more than enough inside of us to be able to get the result that we need. And if we do, then because of other results yesterday, we can look forward to, for the first time in a long time, extending or creating a gap from other teams around us. Liverpool and Chelsea drew 0-0, a big snore draw. Brighton and Leicester couldn't find a winner between them. 2-2, good game that was. Newcastle and Crystal Palace. You know, Newcastle suddenly are not quite looking the same, you know, irresistible force that they have done over the last 3 months. They're starting to kind of slow down a little bit. They're not losing. They're still undefeated. It's an incredible run. But they don't quite have that same zip and ability to rip teams apart of late. And so, you know, things happen in momentum shifts. And in transitions, not just in games but across seasons. If Tottenham can get 3 points tomorrow, then not only do we close the gap by 2 points on Newcastle, we extend the gap over Liverpool, Chelsea and Brighton and Fulham, and then we'll see what happens this afternoon between Manchester United and Arsenal. You could easily see a draw happening there. Two really good teams at the moment that don't want to give an inch in their back line, and both can create good things going forward. So fascinating encounter to watch there. But like I say, if they draw and Tottenham win tomorrow, it's a 2-point swing for us in the positive direction. And when was the last time we could say that? So I want to focus on that, and hoping that the team remember that, and hope that if there is a good draw today between those two teams, then that extra motivation should be there. It will be there for both teams, to be fair, Fulham and Tottenham, and it will hopefully result in a really, really cracking game. And I could see a 3-2 or a 4-3 or any kind of high scoring outcome. And look, if that happens, guys, if we do win the game and then a couple of bits of good positive news come in next week in the transfer market, it will be a wonderful kind of boon to our energy, our temperament and our experience of what has been a really poor month, a really disappointing start to 2023 for all things Tottenham Hotspur. And we just need something to go our way, and then from, like what the guys who were at the Enoch Out protest say, from small acorns great oak trees can grow. Shout out to those guys for doing it. Well done to each and every one of you. I support your efforts, guys, even though I'm not quite there with you yet. Fair play. Shout out to all the rest of you guys, whether you Enoch in, Enoch out, Conte in, Conte out. Just really hope that we can find something positive to get excited about, and I will see you on the next one tomorrow morning. Like, share and subscribe. As always, guys, as always, bye bye.